worth of backing, and they're developing them. I found them like 2 years ago. Steve, are you drinking out of a fishbowl?
The base.
That's amazing, dude.
I drink water in large volume.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I've stored a fish in something like that before.
Yeah. Well, it's got good gripping, good gripping. So easy to pick up.
Yeah, you got the top hair.
Yeah, I can't deal with these like 12-ounce cups, bro. I just slug water. I'm a hydrated individual, but
you got to go for the Yeti or the Hydro Flask.
Yeah, whatever. I have a Hydro Flask and an Nalgene, but that's for to go. This is my at-home volume. I usually have a gallon.
This isn't even a Yeti. This is a knockoff Yeti.
Ozark or
unbranded.
Unbranded.
Robbie, what is your Instagram handle?
Robert F. the Third. Robert, the letter F, and then the third spelled out.
Yeah, so I guess you guys haven't officially met yet.
Yeah.
So Steve, Rob and I were roommates. What was that? 2 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, or three now.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we lived in Sewickley, Pennsylvania, did a program called Pittsburgh Fellows. We're roommates for 9 months and lived in a very small space together.
Yeah.
So we got pretty tight.
Through Andy's bedroom to get to the bathroom.
Those are fun living arrangements. It's just a good wake up call. You get a quick checkup on your buddy, and yeah.
You sleep well? Yep. Okay. See you, Andy.
Have a good bathroom break.
Did you put coffee on?
Yeah.
That's I think you were telling me about him earlier, but does he work on any of the projects you're working with?
So Rob and I have been
no.
Yeah. So Rob and I have been aligned from early on in our friendship, and there just hasn't quite been the right opportunity to jump in together yet. But it's one of those things that we've always said, like, hey, we're going to work together. It's going to happen down the line when the opportunity presents itself. And I was just mentioning beforehand the podcast thing. So that might be the first step. We've been kind of brainstorming that for a few months now.
And I have, so the radio show I work for, we often will do series which are funded by donors. And Andy and I met in Pittsburgh, did a program based in Pittsburgh about Pittsburgh. And I want to tell the story of Pittsburgh. I want to do everything from the areas which are not so great and the places you usually don't talk about, and also the tech side and the sustainability of the PNC building in Pittsburgh is the greenest building in the country or something ridiculous like that. So Andy and I have been brainstorming sort of about that for the last 2 months or so, something like that.
Yeah, I mean that specifically the last 2 months, but you and I have talked since Sewickley about working together. It's just a matter of how and when.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know how to record podcasts, with the best, most streamlined way to do it?
As far as
video?
So we don't do podcasting. Actually, that's my current project is trying to get a podcast up and running, because what we do now is we take our 2 hours of radio that we air, 5 days a week, and just slap that up on our podcasting platforms, which is fine, but you're not going to grow an audience that way. You're not going to, there's no growth in that model. So I'm trying to at least push us in that direction. I actually submitted a demo podcast yesterday to take our content that we already have, and turn it into something that's an actual branded podcast. So, as far as podcasting goes, I can tell you a lot about radio, and radio formats and stuff, but podcasting, I listen to a ton, but as far as producing them, I don't have too much experience with that. And
I think the hardest, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and usually, I've been thinking about doing podcasts, how I'd want to. It's a lot easier when you're on one spot to do that, because then you can have your, whether it's Audition or Pro Tools or whatever you're using to edit the software and record the software, and you can have everybody's mics connect to the same thing. There are ways to do that individually and then splice the audio together, which I think is better than the next step up from Zoom, because you can sometimes not even tell that you're in different rooms if you have good enough recording software and the mics, and then just have somebody I'm an audio engineer, so I know I would easily be able to splice that stuff together. So I think that's the most ideal way of recording as far as video goes. I don't pretend to be an expert at video. I tried video editing and like this is above my pay grade and takes not something I want to dig into too much.
Yeah, and the processing power you need to do, you know, the right video the right way is a lot.
Yeah.
Like the laptop that I have has to be pretty powerful if I'm going to do any video editing. The hardest part for me, Steve, as I've been experimenting with it, has been synchronizing the audio with the video, because especially if they're recorded from a separate device. And there's a couple tricks that I learned to do that. Like I had a buddy tell me that you just kind of like at the beginning beforehand, and then you just align that clap noise and the rest of it should be aligned from all devices. But you'd have to align that in the editor. And then especially when you have like 3 people in different locations managing the video and figuring out how you want to present that. When you can't have like I don't know if you've watched obviously you've watched Joe Rogan's podcast and stuff like that, where there's usually like a 2-person shot or a 3-person shot, and then there's like a single shot of each person. So you need 3 cameras. And, you know, that's relatively difficult from a financial standpoint to get those 3 cameras and to set them up and have an actual studio space as well. Me and my buddy Ethan, who we have to have on at some point, are starting to build up a little bit of this media kit. So like I have a camera, he's going to have 2 cameras. So we'll be able to do that. It's just a matter of then how do we take the process of editing that thing and streamline it down so that it doesn't take us 6 days to develop a single podcast. So not that, I mean, 6 days is a little bit long, but in all seriousness, how do we just like make it the most concise process?
I need to mine is like I do it and I post it immediately. Like that's what I record it on my laptop through OBS, and you know, and cut out the beginning and the end, throw on the sponsors you know, at the beginning, and then just upload it. Like, and then I copy and paste whatever they have in their website usually at, you know, their about section, and just throw that in the description. And then usually it's like I can't be fiddling around with like, you know, the fine minute details of like uploading it, because like I just don't like, I don't see the profit of it like right now. So like I've just been doing that. But like,
are you on YouTube right now?
Yeah, I do post on YouTube. But for that audio synchronizing with the video, there's a if you right click, there's a feature where it does it for you automatically, I believe. I'm almost positive. You know, like you have to like click, it's in Premiere, I believe. But if you right click if you select both of them and then right click it, there's like a drop down option where you can actually synchronize it automatically. So I would look into that.
Yeah, I think sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of those things that's like,
yeah,
it's hit and miss, and it's like one of those automated things that's really nice, but it doesn't always work the way it should. At least I've kind of run into it that way before. So.
Yeah, with audio stuff, like Adobe Audition has the same, like you can automate like levels and bring them all to try and equalize, but it's much better to go in and do everything. It takes a lot more time, but to do all those things individually and just line them up.
Are you Ohio Business Podcast with the microphone on YouTube?
No, I am Stephen Pohl on YouTube. Yeah.
Do you have the Ohio Business Podcast too?
I do not.
It's interesting. Somebody has it, and it's got like a outline of Ohio, similar to what you.
I actually might have done that, but interesting.
It doesn't have very many videos on it. There's only like 3 videos. So
I don't know.
Anyway,
Dang.
that's just one of those like weird like name branding things that we're experiencing that with Pose right now. Is because we used to be called Gearheads and we had to rename the whole thing. So we went through the whole like, hey, is there other companies that have this? Like, what's the brand look like in the country right now? And there's a couple other companies around the world that have like a similar name, or even like there's Pose Fitness is out of Australia and they do like fitness apparel, but because it's out of Australia, for one, it doesn't have as much of an effect, and 2, because it's going specifically for fitness apparel, and we're going for a different good or service. We just learned about trademarks, and they have to be tied to a specific good or service. So the fact that it's a different good or service kind of validates us a little bit as well. So it's been cool to learn about that stuff.
Funny thing about that trademark name stuff with Clay Financial, which is the investment company I own, Robbie, some guy knocked at my door and he was trying to serve me legal papers. But my roommate, it was my roommate who answered it. And he's trying to like, is this the office of Clay Financial? Like, yada, yada, yada. This guy's got a flashlight in his eyes. Like, you know, bunch of like, looks like a cop dude. He sat outside our house for a little bit. So I was scared as shit that I was going to get like sued for something. So then the guy came up and then they actually got the packet in the mail. It was like somebody was suing Clay Financial in Indiana. I was like, oh my God, like, thank God. I was so freaked out about answering my door because I was like, what the hell is going to happen?
On Clay Financial?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Whew.
So some guy, Clay Financial in Indiana, got screwed. I read the whole legal document and like, this guy's interesting. So I thought that was.
Oh man.
Yeah,
My goodness.
Yeah. Robbie, are you on LinkedIn as well?
I am. Yeah, it should still be Robbie on there. Let's see. I have that tab open. Yeah, Robbie Davis.
Okay. So I'm trying to just put this, get this posted that we're dropping, like doing one. Okay.
What's that? Did you take that picture in the background?
What do you mean?
On your LinkedIn, Robbie.
Where?
Your cover photo. Did you take that picture?
Oh yeah, that's my sister took that of me when we were in Bath, England. And
yeah, that, but then your cover photo, not your profile picture.
Oh,
the mountains
let
and
me
the lake.
see. Oh, I think so. I'm pretty sure that's Switzerland. There's a really good chance that's Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah, that actually, Tully and I were just talking about wanting to go back. Well, I want to go back. She's never been to Switzerland before. But
Come with me if you want.
Yeah, if it could offset the cost, yes. It's like one of the most expensive places to travel. It's
really?
insane. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's like for a night at a 3-star hotel. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's like $700-800
a night.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
For the 5-star with the view and like to go blow everything out is like $2,400
a night. That's crazy.
Damn, that makes sense though.
I don't
it's
know.
Worth it.
Ready
it's
for
beautiful. That. It's like something you'll never forget, but it's also not cheap.
So Robbie, what kind of is your background that led you into get this radio position?
None.
None?
I've always done, been in bands, or I even worked as a theater tech in college and kind of played around with the audio board for our annual dance show that I worked on. But there was no real, and I had a music talk show every Sunday night, I think it was, for freshman through junior year, but like no big drive to go into radio. My dad has always been in radio, but more advertising and marketing, not the creative production, interview side. So I thought, that's dad's world. I'll never do that. And then Andy can tell you, I wanted to go to law school for the longest time, and called up my current boss who went to UVA law school. I said, hey, this is my plan. What do you think? And he goes, that's a great plan. I got something for you to do beforehand. And I was like, what? And I figured it would be, legal internship or something, that has to actually do with law school. And he flew me down to Oxford, Mississippi, where we're based here. I met with the team, and the mission of the radio show, which is basically to not be on either side of the aisle and just tell stories about the country, whether it's history or business or sports or, man on the street. Like I've gotten my friend in Nashville who it was just his life story. He's not like, nobody really knows who he is, but he has a really neat story. And so that's kind of the drive of what we do here. I thought that's something that's really cool, and I want to be a part of that. So no audio editing experience before I started working here, and been here for 2 years. Like I've learned so much. I love it. And now I think when I started, we had 2 million listeners across the country. Now we're at like 3 million listeners across the country. Yeah, we're on 200. I think it's 230 stations across the United States.
Oh, damn!
So it's fun. Like it's not just like, radio station, or it's like a national radio show. And with nothing political, because like usually to get that big, you need some political hook, or like you need to be a Rush Limbaugh or a Sean Hannity or whatever. And we're just like, no, you can do that by just telling stories.
Yeah,
you want to talk about some of your favorite stories that you've run into over the last 2 years? Because there's some cool people in that list. Just kind
there
of.
is. So one of my favorite, just on a personal level, because Andy can tell you, like, one of our favorite things when we were in Pittsburgh would go out to the bar that was down the street from our house, hang out with the guys, get some pizza, get some beer, and then dollar Yingling nights. And so like Yingling is like my just like feel good comfort beer. And I got to interview Jennifer Yingling, who's the 6th generation operator of the company now, which that was awesome. One of the other kind of big wild names is there's a podcast called My Brother and Me. It started in 2010, I think it was. And now I think they have 6 or 7 different podcasts on Maximum Fun Network. And I got to interview Justin McElroy, who's the oldest brother out of that crew. I'm trying to think there aren't really other big names. It's just, it really is just random, business owners or random, I got to interview the CEO of Federated Financial in Pittsburgh. So it really is like, Joe Schmo to a guy who's, running a multi-million-dollar company. It's an email or a phone call away, and you just say, hey, I know you've got something really cool to tell me. Like, would you sit down for an hour and a half and talk?
That's what's so great about the podcasting and like radio. You're an email. Like, people love telling their story. They love talking about their business. It's great exposure for everybody involved. And, it's a good way to like get your story out there and other people's. So like, I was telling Andy this, like, just trying to sell like financial, advice to people is almost, banging their head against the wall. But, getting people on a podcast, like people reach out to you. So it's probably the best thing I've ever done was start a podcast. So I think everybody that has any type of business should start a podcast. Like, it's so easy. You just talk about your industry, get people within your industry, get customers in about your industry, talk products, talk anything about just your industry. And like, it's so people will gravitate towards it, and you just meet people. That's what I love about it. Like, I get to meet you. Like, you seem like a great dude. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it
like,
really is.
Yeah.
And those people, it's wild. I got, so we're right next to Ole Miss here, University of Mississippi. And there was a guy who he came here, played, I think he was a punt returner, and he was some special teams guy and didn't do anything, following. But his dad used to own, I think it was the biggest oil company, now it's the biggest oil company in Mississippi. Before he and his brother grew it, his dad started it. And now that guy's like, he's like, hey, anytime you need anything, just let me know. And his friend, who's a life coach, leadership expert, has this wild life story. Actually, I have it here. This guy, his name's Chris Kellum. Awesome, just like guy who's like, hey, he talks about how like everybody, if they really put their mind to it, you've got potential. Everybody can do something. Like you can either be like a really good ditch digger, or you could be, a really good life coach. You could be a really good, financial advisor, really good podcaster, whatever it is. Like, everybody's got the potential to be excellent. It's like, are you going to actually put effort into being excellent? And so now that guy, like, I'm going to call him hopefully in the next week or so. I haven't set up a time, but like, it just happened to be, I met him because he came along with his friend who I was interviewing. Who, like, I didn't even know I was going to meet this guy. And it really is, you don't know who you're going to talk to. And I think my biggest thing is you can narrate these radio shows and podcasts. And I have some producers, on our team who they do that. And that's awesome. Like, they have great voices and they have great insights that they put into their stories. But in my mind, I think now, I used to say I can count on one hand how many times I narrated a story, but now it's 2 because I did it 6 times. Because it's not my story to tell. Like, if I'm doing these things to collect somebody else's story, to hear their voice talking about their life. And that's what I wanted the final product to be. And if I have to be in there, okay, I have to be there. But there's again, it's 6 times. Like you can have somebody tell their own story. I think that's so powerful. Like somebody in their own words telling you what they've been through. That's how you learn lessons. That's how you teach lessons.
I think you get so much more perspective on what a person's journey has been, because like when you see it from the public side or like social media or anything like that, you only get one angle of the things that they kind of put out. And it's, some people curate that to look a certain way, but like for me, I just post some stuff that's happening and it's really just kind of pieces of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. So I feel like when you get somebody to talk through it, you get the logic that they use to get themselves through different steps. And that kind of logic is what's super helpful in applying things to your own life. So like the podcasts that I listen to that are the most helpful to me are like the Jocko Willing podcast, the David Goggins podcast, the ones that they're like talking about how they use their mind to solve a super, super tough problem and get through a milestone of some sort. But only their perspective is the one that actually experienced it their way.
Yep. And I think one of my favorite stories is, our country seems to be in unrest right now. Like there's a lot going on.
Seems,
yeah,
huh?
Just a little.
Yeah.
But there's this wild story. So here's actually, I think this is actually one of the funny, or not funny, it's the greatest stories I think I've had the privilege to tell. And it's been there have been multiple blocks, which like in the radio world is like, you have 4 blocks in a radio hour, and you can tell a story in that. And I've broken her story up, and I'll say who she is in a second. But there's this businesswoman called Fawn Weaver, and her father was Frank Wilson, who was one of the biggest producers in Motown Records history. And at the age of, I think it was 15, she left home. And she lived in the projects of LA, and realized she didn't fit in. And so she started a few different businesses and invested and got some money back and failed, invested again, failed. And her latest project is actually the story of the former slave who taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey.
Jesus. And
it is this wild story. And this story came out in the New York Times in 2016, and everybody's jumping to conclusions because nobody know the actual story. They're saying, oh, well, this guy, Jack must have stolen this recipe, or of course, another white man who's stolen something from, the African-American community, which, to be fair, like there are a lot of those things. Like you can't talk about, and I don't want to dig too deep into that, but like there are instances where, that's the case. So she goes to Lynchburg, Tennessee, where, Jack Daniels is located, and she starts talking around town. She starts talking to Jack Daniels' family and the former slaves family. And these families have been friends now since, the late 1800s. And there was no stealing. There was no taking ideas. They were like, these guys were best buds. The guy who taught him, his name's Nearest Green. He was one of the richest people in Lynchburg, Tennessee at that time. Like it's a story that like nobody, like you go, wait, hold on, what is this? And you dig into it, and she, like, this was her hope. Like she had just lost her niece. She was in this point of her life. She goes, oh my gosh, like there's like, I need something to propel me forward. And she finds this story and she digs in and realizes that Jack Daniels and this former slave had this familial connection. And like, we wouldn't have Jack Daniels if we didn't have Nearest Green. And then now her latest company is she started Nearest Green Tennessee Premium Whiskey. And like, I've had this stuff. It's great. Like she did a great job, but like she started her own company out of this legacy of friendship and camaraderie. And like those are the stories worth telling. The stories that you would have never heard unless somebody dug a little deeper. And like, there are lessons that we can learn today. Like it really is wild that there's so much that, again, the power of storytelling is really underestimated. We think that facts are going to do it, or statistics, or, oh, well, if I just give, this person this amount of information, they'll be good. It's like, no, we're as humans, we don't do the, do as I say, not as I do. Like we model behavior. And like, if we're going to model behavior, like we're the ones who do it. So like, let's do it well. Let's tell stories of other people who do it well. So that at the end of the day, you know, we have like, because I don't want to be like, oh, it's all about positivity. Because Andy and I were talking the other day. There's like, stress is a good thing sometimes. Like sometimes you have to go through the hard times to get to success. But like, let's talk about that. I don't like, people don't want to talk about hardship. People don't like hardship. It's not fun. But
it makes it interesting, of course, but like it's difficult to get through. And sometimes you I'm not going to go into the details of what happened this week, but we had a crazy week from a startup perspective, to the point where we were like, oh no, is this project on hold again? Right. And we were like, the first bit of information that we found out was like, oh no, like we might be dead in the water again. Like, and it's not that we're dead in the water. It's just that we're at a standstill and we don't know what the next thing to do to move forward is. We found that out in the morning of the day. And by the end of the day, we were already moving again, because we had good connections and we had good conversations on that day, rather than just being defeated and reactionary from the initial bit of information that we got. So at some point I can dive into that whole story, but we're still a little bit in the middle of it. So I want to see how it turns out before we dive into it.
Well, from this, you know, just stress and storytelling, like a lot of people see successful individuals and they just see they're successful and they really don't know how they became like that. And then if you actually sit down with whoever's successful, like they definitely, especially entrepreneurs, business owners, you know, they probably just ate shit forever, you know, and then like people don't, that's what I hate about like just seeing the destruction of small businesses, like, you know, with these riots. It's like, if you met these business owners, like they take their life into it. And it was that I was really hurt by that, because I know what it takes to run a business. Like, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, corporations are another thing. Like, I hate big corp, but you know, business owners, they put their life into it. They risk their families. Like, there's not a lot of security, especially when you're doing restaurants. Like,
restaurants
feels so bad for COVID. And, but the importance of storytelling to, you know, get your message out to that you are a real person behind that storefront. Like that is one of the most powerful things that you can get across.
Yeah. And we didn't want to cover, because we don't do news. Like, we don't do news stories. That's, but news is old. News polarizes. Like, that's not our shtick. But we did end up doing a few stories that were related to COVID. And I think my favorite one out of that was a whiskey company. And I don't know how I do so many whiskey related stories. I mean, I'm not complaining, but
I was going to call you out.
But the Black Button Distillery in Rochester, New York, thought, you know, all this was happening, and they had to, because the distilling process takes so long, you have to, if you're going to shut it down, you have to shut it down, you know, 4 or 5 days. And like start the process and work down to the day, you know, you're going to shut down. And so they were in the process of getting to start to do that, because they said, oh, you know, we don't know if we can be in the same buildings. We don't know anything about this. So they were going to do that. And then the founder, can't remember how the idea came to him. He thinks he either saw it online or somebody sent it to him or something. And he saw that other distilleries across the country were beginning to make hand sanitizer. And nowadays, you see everybody doing it. Like, every distillery really has their own thing, and there are a lot in various cities that do it. But they were one of the first ones who said, no, we're changing what we're doing. Like, but for him, this is the coolest part. And part of it was, you know, it was charity. He really did want to, you know, provide a service for his community, because at first they were just shipping to hospitals in the community and doctors' offices, and then they said, all right, well, now we're just shipping to our community writ large, but you can't really get it outside of the Rochester area. But he said one of the biggest motivators for him was he didn't want his employees to be without work. He wanted to figure out a way that he could still pay them. They could still be in the building with their jobs, with their benefits. And I think by the time, you know, 2-3 weeks after he started all of this, all the full-time staff was back in the distillery, and like most of the half-time staff.
It's a magical story. I mean,
it is
adapting.
And some like, you don't like that. That's worth hearing. Those are the stories that, and again, it wasn't it was related to COVID, but at the heart of it, it was this business owner just saying, hey, this is a hardship we faced, and this is the plan we put in place to get past it.
When it's cool, because it helps other people realize that you don't have to just stick to one thing. You don't have to only have one expertise. You don't have to you don't have to be stagnant whenever you don't have anywhere to go. You can actually take action. You can change the way that you're thinking. You can adapt and grow and do a new thing. Like hand sanitizer is not the same as the spirit industry, but it's close, right?
Yeah.
Like the ingredients are similar and it helps people. So the fact that the government is holding back the alcohol industry as a whole, they can still do good. And that, the other industry that's kind of interesting that I've been a little bit part of is gyms. Gyms are all closed, but now a lot of gyms have said, hey, we need to figure out how to go online. We need to figure out how to keep delivering the same services that we do in gym, out of gym. We need to help people figure out how to stay fit, because most of them, all of their fitness plans are built off of having a weight set or having machines in the gym, and they don't know how to do that stuff at home. The guys I live with, we had to figure out how to do an entire body weight only workout for 3 months. And no, I didn't like it, but it's still fitness. So in the same way that they went and took hand sanitizer and said, hey, we're going to add this to a new industry, now they get into telehealth almost with fitness. And it's this isn't what we do, but it's what we need to do.
Yeah, I work, a buddy of mine here in Oxford owns a gym, and so I work for him 2 days a week. And he had to do the same thing. He was like, all right, well, everybody, but it was, I like to I like to see how leaders respond to tough situations like this. I obviously don't, you never wish a hard situation on somebody, but it's neat to watch sometimes how people handle that. Are you going to step up? Are you going to be creative? Are you, and you really get to see people's true colors at that point. Are they actually doing things for people that they're serving? Or really is it oh, well, we're sorry, we gotta, we're just gonna cave, it's, I don't know, it's really telling. I think that the last few months have been really telling, and you get to really see people's true colors for the better or for worse. And thankfully I've been really surprised. I tend to be a pessimist when it comes to to people, but I've been really pleasantly surprised when I see how, especially business owners now are getting through all this.
Yeah. Even in Pittsburgh, we've had a big push for to support local businesses, and people are deliberately going in. They're going into downtown. They're ordering food from these restaurants who don't have any people. Now, thankfully, we're allowed to go eat outside on patios, so restaurants can actually have service. But during the lockdown phase, all these restaurants are just essentially dead in the water. They can barely bring in some of their employees because nobody's allowed to be close to each other. And whenever they figured out that they could have some employees to run the kitchen and stuff like that, the community also did a pretty good job of rallying behind them and actually going to spend money at those places, whether it was, gift cards for when COVID was over, or just running their dinners off of restaurants and stuff like that. So I think, we did lose some of our favorite places in town, but at the same time, we also maintained a bunch of them as well, which was good, especially for the massive restaurant industry that Pittsburgh has. It's hard to support that many good businesses whenever, going out's not a priority anymore.
Yeah, that's been a huge question for us in Oxford, because first of all, it's Mississippi, so our population is low as it is, but it's a college town. And you think what happens during the summers, your population halves. I don't know what it's like. You're in Columbus area, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't know how big OSU is compared to the general population of Columbus, but at least for Ole Miss,
it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Yeah, and
especially on game day.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. We SEC Nation gets here, and it's so we lost baseball season, and you did at Columbus too. We lost, probably going to lose football season. That's where it seems to be heading, and that's where a lot of they stock up in that football and baseball season, and I guess basketball season. And the businesses will have that money aside so that during the summer months, they can run. And now I've really, been looking out. There have been a few businesses that have been closing, but it really same thing here, even though it's on a smaller scale than Pittsburgh. People will be buying gift cards, or businesses found ways to do pop-up meals, which is really cool. They do hey, we're going to do one box for $20 for one person on Fridays. And it was a different, one week they had dim sum, a dumpling meal. And one they had a barbecue meal. And one they had just a comfort fried chicken meal. It was just wild to see, the restaurant industry here try and be creative. And now we have socially distanced inside and out restaurants. So my wife and I are going to go for a date night tonight because we haven't had one of those in who knows how many months. But it's, it's cool. Like it's sad, like you said, Andy, it's sad to see some of those favorite restaurants, close. But when you still get to like see some of them stay open because the community just said, hey, no, we love what you do and we don't want to see you leave. That's awesome.
Did you ever go to Union Standard with me?
No.
In the Union Trust building?
I didn't.
Yeah, we lost.
Did they close?
Yeah, it's super sad. So Steve, it's a restaurant right in the building that my dad's company's in. As they've kind of grown as a restaurant, as they came into the building, we were the first tenant to be in that building after they renovated it, and then they started bringing in some restaurants. And the chef is a guy who was at a different restaurant that's like one of my parents' favorite restaurants. It was called 11 in the Strip District. And he moved over, and I might be messing up this information, but I think it's right. But so he moved over and started Union Standard in our building. We knew him from 11, and we kind of were around a lot. And Dad took meetings in the restaurant. I started taking meetings in the restaurant and did like happy hours and stuff like that. So we were there a lot. Got to know the bar staff, got to know the waiters, and whenever the riots started happening, it was like just like a little bit too dangerous, and also just the business wasn't coming in because nobody's downtown, and so they ended up closing doors. It's a big loss for us, but we hope that he'll be able to open up a new spot once everything calms back down. So yeah, it's sad. They had a lot of really good food, but
and Andy likes his good food.
I grew up with it. It's part of my genes.
Well, aren't you Italian?
Yeah, so my mom's side is Italian. Her parents her dad's 100%, so I think she's 50% or a little bit more, and I'm like 25%. But still, like, we have a lot of Italian culture in our family, and like we don't do the whole 7 fishes things, but it still feels pretty Italian every time we hang out. So, but yeah, we love the Pittsburgh restaurant scene, so we're sad to see some businesses suffering. Surprisingly
enough, I feel like I haven't seen too many Columbus businesses go out of like restaurants go out of business. So that's been interesting. I don't know why. Maybe I just haven't seen enough. But I was talking to a coffee shop owner in Athens, Ohio, which is where I went to school, OU, and he said, that they were struggling, and then that he knew a lot of business owners that went under. So maybe I'm just not seeing it, but it's tough out there. I just feel for them, because like it's not because they don't have demand from people. It's just because COVID. Like you can't even imagine that. So it's heartbreaking, really.
I mean, you can only make so much from takeout.
Yeah. And
then tipping is typically down when you think of takeout. I think it's neat. I've actually seen some restaurants in town from what they're reporting, tipping has gone up because it's still a small town feel. So people know their servers, people know, they're like, oh shoot. So they have a pool fund for tips for servers. But I think statistically, like, you don't make as much in takeout. So it's just, you do wonder how are people going to come out of this? Like, we're not done by any means. We're still in the thick of it. Like, it's like, what's next? That's been the theme of 2020. What's next?
Yeah.
I do like to see there's a little group of us developing in Pittsburgh of just kind of creatives, photographers. The one guy owns the coffee shop. I have my businesses. The other guy's an Army captain and has a startup of his own on the side. And it's neat to see these small business owners, and a lot of us are kind of early stage, but we all have our own projects, and we're starting to collaborate. We're starting to give each other jobs. We're starting to bring each other in on projects and figure out how our businesses can work together. I don't know. We did a giveaway last week that promoted all of our businesses, and it just kind of gets the momentum going for us. So I don't know exactly what could apply to like the restaurant industry, but it would be cool to see that happen, have different restaurants collaborating with each other, maybe doing like outdoor eating events. Like Pittsburgh's closed down some of the streets to have outdoor seating, or like what if you could do a big dinner in Market Square or something like that? that just had like multiple chefs. You do like a federal galley setup in Market Square where you could have 4, 5, 6 restaurants kind of all doing a big meal and then just have massive community tables over the rest of the thing. So I don't know what that looks like, but I think it'd be cool to see, because at some point we're going to hit the heavy problem solving phase of this. Right now we might still be in the like business is just kind of affected and we have to stick it out. But if it goes too long, we're going to get in the, all right, we need to change our ways and we need to do new things. Yeah. So that demand I think will pick up here if COVID continues too much longer. Yeah,
I was talking to another coffee shop owner, and he started renting out his building, like little sections for like kind of like a WeWork type style. Like you can rent it your little section for an hour, 2 hours. They rolled that out. They rolled out shipping for coffee beans, like a worldwide subscription. And then they started doing the mobile orders. Like they said it was all on the back burner of those ideas, and it came to the forefront. So I think we're seeing a lot of the people that were kind of like starting to innovate within their space, just be forced to push those new ideas out and like test them. And I don't think this COVID, just these guidelines are going to go away for probably, like a year. Like I just don't see how it could get better. So I feel, I don't know. I have my own thoughts on COVID, but it's been crazy to see how business owners react, but.
Yeah. Well, I do hope, I know we've handled things differently in the US. There's whatever, but you do see in Europe, like the Nordic countries are, I think, all going back to school in the fall. You have studies out of Germany and I believe it was Denmark that said, and again, how kids handle COVID is completely different than how adults deal with COVID. And even in adults, then you break it up into age groups and all that. But Denmark with, 3 to 4 feet, in the classroom and, washing your hands, like they didn't see an uptick in student, teacher, or community outbreak in COVID. So like there are ways around this. And I think once we start, I think one of the great and horrible things about the US, depending on how you look at it, is we do have that just polarizing, like you're either right or you're wrong. And there isn't like reaching across the aisle a lot and saying, hey, how can we work on this together? Because I think when we actually get into that phase of things, which you're beginning to see, you really are. Like if you're paying attention to the news, you're seeing people saying, okay, well, maybe there's a solution to this. I don't know. I think we can be there, soon. I'd hope we can be there sooner. Because I've seen how a small town can do that. And like, you're hoping that each small town along the way can do their own thing. And, ideally that affects the whole, but you never know. I thought COVID was going to be over in, 2 months when this all started. I was totally wrong with that.
So we're kind of approaching an hour. Is there anything you guys want to touch up on?
No. It's kind of cool to just get this group rolling a little bit. Have you meet Robbie, have Robbie meet you, and so kind of we understand what each other does.
Yeah.
I think it's good as an intro conversation, and then it'll be cool to see what kind of conversations we can have as Robbie and I develop our project, and as you keep with Ohio Business Podcast going and stuff like that. I think there will be some cool opportunities and some other cool people that we can bring in as well. So.
Yeah, awesome. And I really can't stress enough, like story really is everything, and everybody's got a story. And I don't know, I've been interested. I don't know how that's going to play. You can ask Andy. I had no idea I was going to be in radio 2 years ago. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in 2 years, but like, this is fun. And I enjoy like conversations like this where you can actually bring in experience and not just, shoot the breeze, but talk about things that matter. Like It's fun. It is. And it needs to happen.
Yeah. Like you said, everybody has a story. I don't want to limit my podcast to just business owners, but there's people that just work their whole lives that I want to talk to. Like everybody's got, experience in many regards. So you guys should get those podcasts rolling, man. It's fun. I love it.
Yeah. And we do, again, we have 2 hours of podcast 5 days a week that's up on like Apple Podcast and all that. It's just not a podcast.
Yeah.
It's a radio show.
Yeah.
And like with nowadays, you got to specialize. You got to really hone it in. Like you can't,
Niche.
because there's so much out there. You can't just be like, oh, this sounds like fun. Like it's got to
shoot
have
the breeze
a purpose.
with the boys. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to have a purpose.
Yeah.
And so like that's, I don't know, I think I've learned that more and more. Like, okay, like do it with intentionality and intensity.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah.
Well, you guys want to wrap it up there?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Well, thanks for getting this together, Andy.
Of course, yeah. I think, like I said, I think there's a bunch of other people too. And as Rob and I get my own thing going, we should just like mesh everything together.